Welcome to a broadcast of the recent Lorain County Commissioners' General Meeting. Unless otherwise announced, meetings are held Wednesday morning at 9:30 at the Administration Building, 226 Middle Avenue, 4th floor, downtown Elyria. These are public meetings and you are invited to attend. Agendas are posted prior to the meeting at www.loraincounty.us. Click on Departments to see the Commissioners page, then click on View Agenda.
Good morning. Welcome to Lorain County Board of Commissioners meeting. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning. Welcome to Lorain County Board of Commissioners meeting Wednesday, May 18th. Mr. Williams has the dog.
Good morning. One of the things I'm trying to do is get the personnel at the county kennel involved as well. So, Nelson, if you could tell us about this dog here and what's going on at the kennel, and also a little bit about yourself.
My name is Nelson Delgado, Lorain County Deputy Dog Warden. I've been with the county 14 years, and at the pound we got currently 39 dogs that are available, plus this one, which is about 4 months old. Puppy, female lab, picked up in Middle Avenue, Elyria. So she'll be available on Saturday at 3 o'clock. So other than that, I can't tell you much about myself besides working with these animals. I love working with them. Been doing it for a while, so I don't have any issues with the dogs at all. You know, after 14 years, you just learn about just any trick on them. So
The dog's definitely very calm, probably a good dog for a young family. So if you could come out, take a look at this dog and the other 39 dogs on Saturday.
please, that would help.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
We'll have an appointment today. Mate Rogonjic, I think.
It's Matt.
Matt? Okay. Well, I thought it was Matt, and somebody told me something different, so. At 9:45. So under resolutions, number 1, Job and Family Services bills.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Mr. Kalo.
Aye.
Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Investments.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Mr. Kalo.
Aye.
Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Appropriations.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Mr. Kalo.
Aye.
Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Transfers.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Mr. Kalo.
Aye.
Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
Aye.
No advances, no repayments, requisitions.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Mr. Kalo.
Aye.
Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Travel.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Mr. Kalo.
Aye.
Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Bills.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Mr. Kalo.
Aye.
Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Under the Commissioners, authorize various personnel actions as indicated on the summary sheet for employees within jurisdiction of Lorain County Commissioners.
Mr. Cordez?
Thank you, Commissioner Kalo. Actually, I do have a number of issues I need to talk to the board about, specifically ongoing labor discussions, and I'm also in receipt of a fact-finding report with regard to the FOP unit that covers the dispatches out at the Lorain County Sheriff's Department. We have to act upon it today, so I need to talk with you on that. You look a little confused, Commissioner. We only have a 7-day window from when the report's issued to when we take official action on that. I've only received it 2 days ago, and so we need to discuss it today. We don't have time for another board meeting. Also, ongoing discussions with the United Steelworkers of America, and discussions about the UAW contract with Children's Services. Let me just check my sheet to make sure I got everything I needed there. I do not have any potential hires at Golden Acres, so we don't need to discuss that. Those topics are allowable under the Sunshine Law for executive session discussions, and I desire that we go into executive session at the conclusion of our regular board meeting today to have those talks. But I do understand that Commissioner Kalo has a 10:30 conference call that's been on the docket for a while and is very important. So I'm not sure that we're going to be able to get it all concluded, so we may have to break and decide what we want to do thereafter, depending on the length of our public discussions here.
Thank you. Yeah, I have to vice chair a meeting in Columbus today, so I'm doing it by phone.
Number 10, oppose the sale or lease of the Ohio Turnpike.
I guess I should explain what went on before I make the motion. As we all know, or those of you following it, one of the new administration's objectives with not only selling the state prisons, but also is selling or leasing the Ohio Turnpike. I serve on NOACA, our Northeast Ohio Area-wide Coordinating Agency, on the executive board, and we had discussion that was brought up by Medina County Commissioner Steve Hambley in regards to opposing any sale or lease, and there was some major dialogue. We took it up to the full board Friday. We had to do a roll call vote. It passed with 2/3 majority, asking the state senate and the administration to drop plans of leasing or selling our Ohio Turnpike. This was a hot button issue 5 or 6 years ago, and Lorain County came out strongly against it, along with all of the counties along the Ohio Turnpike. And we want to make sure our voice is heard when it comes to the State House, that we don't agree with this in the least. It's very important to us up here. People, south of here may not appreciate the importance of the Turnpike when it comes to the service it provides and the maintenance. The road is always available. They do a great job. It doesn't get federal financial support. It's paid by fees, and they do a great job. So we're looking to protect that. I'd like to make a motion to send this resolution down to Columbus, that Lorain County opposes the sale and or lease of the Turnpike. I can read it for those of you who'd like to hear it, or we can leave copies for you. But there have been some of the main points. Leases in Indiana, Illinois, long-term and guaranteed toll increases, which gave the state large upfront payments. It's similar to talking about the stimulus money, which has been opposed by the current administration. It was one-time fixes to receive a couple of $2 billion for a state asset for a 50 or 75-year period. I do not believe is the proper way of looking and going forward. ODOT did say they'd be willing to come to a presentation at NOACA as to where the dollars would be spent at, but I think that's sort of after the fact. If it's passed in the budget bill, then we're stuck with whatever it is without any explanation. I think they should have come to us first, especially when we're the Metropolitan Planning Organization, on what those dollars would do prior to trying to push us through the budget bill. So again, I'll make that motion to oppose the sale or lease of the Ohio Turnpike.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Carney had sent an email saying that there needs to be more discussion on this. Do you have anything that you would like to comment on as far as the sale or lease of the Turnpike?
Mr. Carney was quite vocal at NOACA.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
No, I just wanted to congratulate you on your move. We had a very interesting discussion at NOACA, specifically the meeting prior to that, which was the committee meeting discussing this. And there was a presentation. And the vote, as you said, Mr. Kalo, I believe it was 26-13, rejecting it at the regular board meeting. County Engineers Association hasn't officially took a stand, but we're waiting for some action. And these actions you're taking today would more than drive them to discuss this on an official basis. But County Engineers Association statewide hasn't acted yet. I'm working on that right now.
Well, that's actually on my agenda at the County Commissioners Association meeting. I was vice chair of the Jobs, Economic Development, and Infrastructure Committee, and they're holding their meeting today because they've invited some state representatives and senators to discuss, and one of the issues I put on the agenda was the sale of the Turnpike, so that's why I have to get on my conference call to put our input in from Lorain County.
Great.
But I'm hoping the CCAO does the same. And this is a bipartisan effort. Steve Hambley is a Republican county commissioner from Medina County. Tim Brown from Wood County also has brought this up at the CCAO, so we put it into our committee. So hopefully we'll get the state organization commissioners and hopefully the engineers to agree that this is not a proper way of handling a state asset such as a Turnpike.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Basically north versus the south, quite frankly. But
Right. And talking about the 150th anniversary of the Civil War this year, the North versus is just on the radio.
thank you very much.
I was looking at this, and we actually have the governor coming into North Ridgeville on Thursday. I'm wondering, instead of actually having a resolution, the invitation's been made to the board, and I know Mr. Kalo's got an appointment. Would it be better to actually just bring this up to the governor directly instead of doing a resolution? My only concern, and I've said it before on other resolutions, is telling other elected officials how to vote. Do I agree with everything you stated on how the Turnpike does a great job? Yes. We all know if we're traveling east to west or west to east in the wintertime, you want to take the Turnpike because that's going to be the road that's cleared. So I don't know if would you prefer if we just brought this up with the governor tomorrow instead of doing a resolution?
No, I think that's our job as the local elected officials. All politics are local. It comes to us first, and then we push it uphill, Tom, instead of them pushing it down to us.
Well, then I think one thing what I would like to amend to this is to take out on the second page, the oppose the sale of the lease of the Ohio Turnpike, and just keep everything else in there.
I'm
where
sorry,
you have
go ahead, Tom. Which part?
on the second page where it says, we hereby oppose the sale or the lease of the Ohio Turnpike, and further be resolved. Remove that, and in between the lease and occurs, put of the Ohio Turnpike. That way we're stating that we are concerned about the action of the sale. But again, I don't want to come across and actually tell individuals how to vote. I don't think that's something we should be doing.
I think that's our job as local officials.
Ms. Kokoski, I'll let you see
see
this here. I think we're still doing the same thing. We're showing our displeasure with the sale of it, but we're not coming out in such strong language where we could really do something that's...
What part of it did you believe was strong?
I just think that coming out without all the knowledge and all the facts that we're going to say that we oppose it is just a little strong. I believe that it's going to be beneficial to keep it here, but as the governor and state and elected officials, that's up to their job.
Right, but anytime we want to accomplish anything, we always contact our representatives and ask them to, or try to persuade them to do things that benefit our community. So I don't understand why.
Resolutions, though, isn't that just a form of grandstanding? I mean, when I'm looking at getting something done, I pick up the phone and we'll call down to Columbus, and Mr. Cortez, and I had a call yesterday. If I have a discussion with the state rep where I have a different view on something that they're proposing, I contact the state rep and talk to them directly.
I think in this case, though, Tom, not to interrupt you, though, they are going through the budget bill, and it will be coming out of the Senate shortly. So if we don't make our stand, I believe we're just letting it pass and letting those people make the decisions on what affect us in Northeast Ohio.
Yeah.
And like I said, this is a bipartisan across the board from Toledo to Youngstown in opposition of selling or leasing this turnpike. And under it says, further be it resolved, after we oppose the sale, before a sale lease occurs, there needs to be evidence for significant long-term benefits identified. We don't have that currently.
Right.
They're putting it in a bill without telling us any evidence, just like ODOT did at NOACA's meeting on Friday. Mm-hmm. They're offering after the fact, next month or the month after, because we have our summit next month. The bill will be done and passed, and we'll have no say whatsoever. And I don't think that's our job as local officials. We're supposed to let the guys at the state level know what affects our constituency and then what affects our region. And I do not think that selling or leasing this turnpike is good for a long-term benefit. It's a good short, fill of money, but I don't think it's a long-term benefit, so
And
I'd
I-
like to call the question and go
Well,
for the
well,
vote.
let me just say something. Standing alone on an issue and calling someone and saying, this is how I would like you to vote, is a little different than us as a board. You know, like one standing alone or a braid, what's stronger? And three people as a board saying, this is how we feel about this issue, just like NOACA as a board said the same thing. I think we need to stand together on this and not stand alone. I mean, but that's my opinion.
Oh, and I respect that, and I don't disagree with you on the sell of that. I'm just saying that we're having the governor coming in on Thursday. I think that would be a better
And that's why we could say,
opportunity.
as a board, I'm sorry to interrupt, but as a board, we feel this way, not just I as a single commissioner, because, you know, none of us can do anything on our own as a,
Right.
we have to do everything as a board, so.
We want roll call?
Okay, do you want to bring it
Do
to
you
a
want to
vote?
give her a chance to
Yeah,
comment?
go ahead, Elizabeth, then we'll call for the
Elizabeth
vote.
Rumics, Oberlin. To whom is this addressed?
This is going to go to the state senate, the state house, and the governor.
Meaning each person,
Each entity, yes.
each entity? And, okay, it goes to the Senate. Presumably a secretary or somebody, one individual?
No, we would send it to the president of the senate,
And
and they would copy everyone else.
he presumably would, yeah.
Correct.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kalo?
Aye.
Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Thank
Under-
you.
Under the engineer, advertise for bids for sign materials to upgrade signs in county road system. Notice to be in the Chronicle on May 20th and 27th. Bids open at 2 p.m. on June 6th. Federal grant of 80% was received. An estimate cost of $62,500. Remaining will be paid from the supplies material account.
So moved.
Second?
Discussion. Mr. Kayla?
Aye.
Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
It's
Do we wanna go into
9:45. Can we go into the public hearing?
Yep.
Matt, it's
Or
your show.
appointment. It's an appointment rather than a public hearing.
Okay. Well, you have
I
it in a
know.
public hearing, so.
Ernie, the gentleman up there, is our IT director, so he can help you.
Yeah, there's just, right. He's gonna have to change his name to me. Okay, thanks. Thank you. I wanted to, well, first of all, my name is Matt Rogonjic. I'm with the State Auditor's Office within the Performance Audit section. I'm also here with Michelle Sties, who's our regional office coordinator for this part of the state for Auditor Yost. I wanted to first thank the county commissioners for having me come out here and do this presentation. I know we spent some time discussing the option of doing a performance audit. I put together a brief presentation about performance auditing, what we do, and then I wanted to make myself available to answer any questions or concerns about what we do in performance auditing. So with that, I'll kind of go to my presentation. Just wanted to give you some background information. What's the reason for even doing a performance audit? What's been some of our track record to date with doing these audits? To talk a little bit about the LEAP fund, which has been enacted recently through Senate Bill 4 to help local governments get upfront funding for a performance audit. Give you some examples, and like I said, to answer any questions or concerns you have with an audit. We've been around now with doing performance audits for a little over 16 years. We started back in 1995. It was an initiative of then Auditor Jim Petro, kind of in response to some fiscal difficulties being encountered by the Cleveland City schools and Youngstown schools. That were the kind of the first wave of performance audits that the office did. Since that time, we've done numerous audits from the smallest village up to state agencies. It's kind of run the gamut of things we've looked at. The source for our audits come primarily from two sources. Based on state statute, there's provisions if an entity goes into fiscal, for schools, fiscal caution, watch, or emergency, and then for counties or cities, if you go into fiscal watch or emergency, the Auditor of State has the authority to initiate a performance audit. We get separate funding from the General Assembly for those audits. The goal there being to help those entities find ways to get out of those fiscal designations. The other part of our work is really kind of what we have here with Lorain County, client requested, government requested, where we'll get calls from governments throughout the state asking us to look at certain aspects of their operations. And with those audits, we bill those governments directly, and that's kind of, we'll talk about the LEAP fund where that might be helpful to certain local governments in terms of funding for those audits, at least initially. Right now we have a staffing authorization of about 30 people within the performance audit department of our office. We're actually 4 or 5 people short of that number right now, but we've got a wide group of folks, diverse backgrounds, and we've kind of structured it that way because it gives us, some expertise that we can tap into when we do any kind of an audit. We've got folks with masters in public administration, MBAs, CPAs, folks from the private sector, so a pretty diverse group of staff. I don't want to read this definition to you word for word. It's kind of the Yellow Book definition of performance auditing. What the Yellow Book is it's published by the Government Accountability Office, and it contains the auditing standards that we abide by when we do the performance audits. What I focus on is when we do a performance audit, we're evaluating operations within the entity we're auditing against relevant criteria, whether it be similar counties, other best practices or industry standards that are out there. So all of our recommendations are not based on our opinions, they're based on practices elsewhere. And then the whole value that we think we bring with doing performance audits is we're totally independent, objective. Our auditing standards require us to be that. We have no vested interest in kind of what's going on in Lorain County. We just come at it from a totally objective, independent standpoint. And the whole goal of doing our audits is we'll come up with a report, recommendations, and it's they're not mandates. I mean, they're just recommendations, and it's to help the county, make decisions. I mean, that's kind of what our goal is to give you an independent third-party look at things to help you make decisions going forward. There's kind of 5 general types of things we look at in performance audits. Economy efficiency kind of deals with, are you getting the best bang for the buck? Okay, that kind of an approach. Program effectiveness looks more at, are you achieving the goals that you are set to achieve as a government. Internal management controls, we'll look at policies, procedures, those kind of things. Compliance is kind of obvious, where we'll look at, are you complying with relevant state law, county policy, county ordinance, that kind of thing. And a prospective analysis is kind of, a lot of sometimes what we'll do within a performance audit, we'll kind of look to the future. Oftentimes we'll develop or review like financial forecasts. When we do that, it's based on a set of assumptions, and sometimes local governments find that valuable because it gives them a tool to kind of plan from a financial standpoint. And typically within our performance audits, we tend to touch on all 5 of these kind of audit objectives in one way or another. Usually we're kind of more focused on economy and efficiency and control part of it, but really when we get a request from a government to look at a particular area, that request drives what kind of audit objectives we come up with. What's the rationale? Well, why even do a performance audit? I touched upon that. We're independent and objective. We comply with government auditing standards. Every 3 years, a group of state auditors from around the country come and they'll evaluate our performance audits and ensure that we're complying with those standards. We've had 2 reviews done, the first one in 2006 and the second one in 2009, and we got written comments on the first review that we've addressed, minor written comments, and then the second review resulted in a totally clean, unqualified opinion. So they provided us some assurance that we're abiding by those standards with the work that we do. We try to provide public validation or assurance for any actions you're looking to take. A lot of what happens with our performance audits, governments will use that as kind of a starting point for strategic planning. We help to try to prioritize and direct resources, especially now with how the economy and the financial situation is throughout the state. It kind of helps to prioritize actions and decisions. I mentioned we look at internal controls, look at measuring what are the actual outcomes of your services and the level of service you provide to residents. Support for decision making and just demonstrates a commitment to accountability. I mean, it's not easy having a third party come in and look at your operations. We've been getting lots of requests recently for performance audits, and we think it's really tied to kind of the current economic situation, with rising costs and the whole funding issues that are going on with the state. It seems like now would be a good time to have a performance audit. Why we think we're getting lots of requests. I try to help prioritize resources and find ways of doing things differently to just address the resources that you have. And again, we try to promote the value of performance auditing by, it helps you make decisions, take steps now to help address costs so that in the long run, things will run smoothly in the county, and you won't have you'll have financial challenges, I'm sure, but it'll help try to address some of those long-term issues. Types of criteria or evidence that we use when we're benchmarking the entities that we're auditing. Like I said, it's if you have formal policies or procedures, we'll look at compliance with those, laws and regulations, best or recommended practices, industry standards, and then peer county performance. Typically on a performance audit, we'll try to pick at least 3 similar entities, in this case similar counties demographically, that we would use to benchmark the areas we're auditing here in Lorain. Like I said initially, we can look at anything really that a government requests us to look at. These are kind of common things that we tend to look at. Since personnel probably comprises 75, 80, 90% of your costs, we spend a lot of time looking at staffing, salary, and benefit levels. We look at revenues and expenditures, operations and services. As an example, within county government, we've looked at court operations, we've looked at sheriff office operations, we've looked at children's service board functions before in other counties. And when it comes to kind of overarching county services, we've looked at budgeting practices, financial planning, strategic planning, purchasing, those kind of administrative or support type functions. And collective bargaining agreements tend to again be a common thing we look at, only because it impacts your personnel costs. The track record to date, we've issued 285 performance audits to date. Like I said before, we've done a wide range of governments, including schools, state agencies, counties, cities, villages, and townships too. 2,400 noteworthy accomplishments, and what that is if we go in and do an audit and we see the client or government we're auditing doing a great job in an area, we'll note that as we call them noteworthy accomplishments, where you're outperforming your peers or the recommended standards. A little over 13,000 recommendations. Net annual financial gain exceeds $1 billion, and I just want to put a little caveat on that. That's all potential. When we come up with recommendations that have a financial impact, we quantify what that impact is. It's really then totally up to that government to implement the recommendations. And that also hits on the last bullet there. It's, on average, when we do a performance audit, when we take all of the audits we've done, all of the costs for those audits, and then all of the, financial impacts of those audits, it comes out to, we identify $30 in potential savings for every dollar of audit cost. And that, that it doesn't mean we find savings in every single audit that we do. It kind of depends on the scope and what we find when we do those audits. The LEAP Fund, which I guess stands for Leverage for Efficiency, Accountability, and Performance, it was enacted with Senate Bill 4 that authorized our office to do state agency performance audits. And basically what this is just a loan to state governments and other local governments to help defer the initial cost of an audit. That's the roadblock to doing a performance audit. Our office thought establishing this LEAP fund could help overcome that initial obstacle. The deadline for the first round of applications is at the end of this month. When we get all the applications, they'll go through a review and evaluation process, and we'll then select the pool of governments that'll qualify for the LEAP funding. And then what we'll do is we'll meet with those entities to, again, identify the audit scope, what they would want us to look at, and then put together a letter of arrangement, which is basically our contract or proposal back to that entity that would confirm the scope, cost, time frame, that kind of thing. And we wouldn't begin the audit until that agreement was signed by the government. What happens during an audit, there's 3 general phases we go through: planning, field work, and reporting. Within planning, like I mentioned, we'll try to identify the audit scope, the things that the government wants us to look at. We'll issue that letter of arrangement. At the same time, we'll try to work and identify, peer counties that would serve for the comparisons, and also, talk to you about which counties you feel would serve as peers, and we'd kind of have a dialogue back and forth about who we would want to select. Also, doing research and coming up with our other criteria and benchmarks that we would use in the audit. And then we'd submit what we call an initial request for information to the county to help us get going. Usually it's financial information, staffing information, that kind of thing. Field work is really the bulk of a performance audit. That's from a audited agency perspective, where you would be providing a lot of information to us through documentation requests, through interviews. We'll ask you to participate in status update meetings to let you know here's what we're coming up with, and to get your feedback and input along the way, and to review and provide comment on that feedback we give you, and then when we get to the reporting phase, an initial draft report. From our audit team perspective, we're collecting and reviewing all this information, doing the interviews, doing the research on best practices, and then towards the latter part of field work, we start pulling things together more in a written format, and that would feed into a formal report back to you. And again, like I said, we try to update the governments we audit throughout the process. We try to make it as collaborative as possible. I mean, we're not here, we're not out to get anybody, we're here to help. That's kind of how we go about the audit, and we don't want there to be any surprises at the end. So you'll get multiple chances to give us input and feedback, and you'll know way before we issue that final report what's in that report. The reporting phase, that's where we put everything into a formal report. We have an internal review process where we want to make sure we address the things that we have to in the report, and that we feel it's a quality product. We then, at that point, send a report draft to you and other county officials that are involved within that audit to get your input and feedback. We'll look at that input, the comments you have, meet with you, let you know how we address the report based on your comments and feedback. And then we'll schedule an exit conference meeting where, again, you'll have another opportunity to look at a draft report where it would address and reflect the previous comments you had. And if for whatever reason, we felt that we shouldn't address the comments, or we'll discuss that with you. I mean, we may have to agree to disagree on some things, but you'll know why. For the most part, a lot of the comments we get back, they help to clarify our understanding of operations, and oftentimes, we make updates based on that feedback because of that. At the exit conference, once we're done with that meeting, we ask for all of our entities to provide an official response, and that response is a little bit different than the feedback and comments you'd be giving to us during the audit. The official response is more so, how are you going to use the performance audit? Oftentimes, governments will indicate what they've started to implement. That official response gets published with our audit when we release it publicly. And it's kind of your communication back to the public about the audit. And then at that point, our reports are publicly released. Up until that release date, based on state law, we treat our performance audit confidential. We don't share or publicize information. We would ask that you do the same, because everything is subject to change within the audit, because we're going through the audit process. We have our own internal review process. Things get changed. We get input and feedback from clients. Things get changed. That's why there's, I think, that statute to protect and make sure that our audit's confidential up until we release that final report. And that's, if we get questions from the public or the media, it's, yes, we're doing an audit, here's what we're looking at, and that's basically it until we release the audit. Just some examples of performance audits we've done in other counties. In Cuyahoga County, we've done, I think, 4 or 5 audits. We looked at their, most recently, the auditor's office, the recorder's office, their mental health board, their juvenile court, and the Veteran Services Commission in Cuyahoga County. Mahoning County, similar. We've done several audits. It's been almost maybe 10 years now, but we did a pretty big audit there where we looked at their juvenile court, we looked at their sheriff's office, board of elections, personnel management. Since that first audit, we've done other audits there. We've looked at their children's services board twice there. We put together a 5-year forecast that they had requested, and we also reviewed their solid waste management district. Franklin County, I included. We've only looked at the Veteran Services Commission in Franklin County, 2 separate occasions. They asked us to do that. But we also used Franklin County to serve as kind of a peer county when we did some of these audits, like Cuyahoga County. In Butler County, right now we're doing a pretty large audit there. It's in process where we're looking at, I think, virtually all of their key functions within Butler County, and it's down close to Hamilton County, Cincinnati area. And the bottom line from our perspective is, we think that residents, constituents deserve good government that's efficient, effective, and responsive, and that's where we think we can help with a performance audit. That's basically all that I had. Any questions? I'm sure there are some.
I would just ask you, for a county of this size, if we wanted to do the scope of all of our departments, what would you think the cost of something like that would be?
Cost is such a hard question to answer because it all depends on scope. I mean, I'll just give you examples, and again, these are just examples based on the specific work we're doing in these other entities. Butler County right now, I believe the cost, I'm not involved with that audit, so again, I don't know all the particulars, but the cost is around $115,000.
Well, Butler's a good cross to us. They're the 8th largest county. We're the 9th, so they're
Okay.
slightly larger than us.
Okay. But again,
But they're just doing the veteran services there, you said.
Butler's doing more than just that. I don't know every single thing that we're looking at, but I know it's fairly comprehensive.
Oh, okay.
They're looking at multiple things in Butler County.
Yeah, our crosses normally are Butler, Stark, and Lake County as comparisons to Lorain County. So.
Okay. So it really, just to give you the range, right now we're wrapping up an audit in a small village in Cuyahoga County, where all they wanted us to look at was staffing levels in their police department. That was $4,700. Then we did an audit of a state agency of the Medicaid program a few years ago, where, very complex. That was $1 million. So, it runs the gamut.
Mm-hmm.
Over the last couple of years, the average cost of our audit has been around $50,000, $55,000.
And the payback for the sleep program is how long? 30?
A year.
A year?
A year.
Let's do 30.
And again, the theory behind it is that we'd front the upfront cost through the LEAP fund. We'd come up with recommendations, and if we come up with savings, that could maybe help you pay for that cost the next year, the audit cost. And again, if we don't identify, just as an example, say the audit cost was $50,000, we only identify 30 in savings, you don't pay that difference of $20,000.
Okay. Actually, I would like to open it up to elected officials and.
Not elected, but
Yeah.
We represent electeds.
representing.
Jimmy wants to switch us back.
Thank you, Commissioners. I just had a couple of questions. You had mentioned use of courts. We're very strong advocates for performance audits, just to be on upfront about it. But you had mentioned courts, and we looked at your website, and we found nothing beyond 2001. Do you have any current staff that have experience working with courts, such like you would get from the National Center for State Courts or the Supreme Court of Ohio?
We've done court audits. The last court that we looked at was in Garfield Heights. That audit was issued, I think, in 2009 or 2010. I can't remember. And you may not have seen it because it's within the entire city of Garfield Heights audit. It was one section.
Okay, because we were looking specifically
Yeah.
for courts, obviously from a selfish standpoint. We're very supportive of that. I was just concerned about, some of the specific information that we're looking for, the specific kinds of evaluation and the
Right.
skill sets on the part of the evaluators to be able to help us out in terms of identifying those issues that we may need to address.
Right. And right now we're actually looking at the municipal court in the city of Mansfield. We're wrapping up that audit now, and the courts was one thing we looked at there too.
Okay, and I was contacted by Butler County in terms of, so I know that they are working on some court things, and I know the report's still in progress. At what point, do you have any sense of when that might be available?
Butler County?
Butler counties, because as Commissioner Kalo said, I often am in touch with the Butler County people because of the comparable size and population and issues like that. Butler, Stark, Trumbull. There's counties that we often use to compare ourselves to in terms of our numbers.
I'm not involved with that one, so I'm not sure. But I do know it's in our like final internal review process, so it could be a few months from now. But I don't know specifically for sure.
Certainly beyond the time frame that's required for getting this this first initial application in.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just round money, though. Round one money. There'll be round two and round three to apply for. How is that budgeted?
Right now, there'll be the second round is set for next year around the same time. The one caveat is if in this first round we don't get enough applicants, there may be another round this year too.
September, second,
Right.
third quarter. Third or fourth quarter. Okay.
Right. I'm not sure of timing when it would happen, but we would do something. Again, the allocation was split between the 2 fiscal years.
Now, your 4 counties you already showed are all available on the website to see what they had audited?
Yes, except
What
Butler
four-
County.
Except Butler County.
Right.
It's not finished yet.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah, if you go to our website and you go to the audit search function and you just type county performance or even performance, you could sort it by county. You should see everything.
And then you can go through a line item and what you recommended and potential cost savings?
Right.
Now, going back, you said you had 09 audits. Were any of those the county governments?
We issued in last year the auditor's office in Cuyahoga County was one audit that we
That's a
issued.
little bit different than us. Let's go back down. Mahoning.
Mahoning, the Children's Services Board, we issued that one last year.
More county government functions, commissioners and departments, I think would be more that we would need to look at for examples of talking to you about what would be audited, I guess, and have some dialogue across county lines. I mean,
Of like kind of more of various departments, you're saying, like where?
yeah, under county commissioners.
You can look at
Children's Services in Lorain County is a self-funded,
Right.
levy-funded. We appoint board members, and other than approving their union contracts, we don't have any day-to-day operations that we could adjust. They would have to apply for an audit from you, I'm assuming.
Well, I mean, we've had it's in Mahoning County when they initiated that audit. It was actually, I think, led by the commissioners because I think they still have funding and an appropriation authority over.
Right,
it.
everybody's a little bit different. So
Right. But if you want, I mean, Mahoning County, it's been years now, but there the one initial audit we had looked at pretty much everything.
I have to go back and look at the website to see what examples
Sure.
are on there. Sure.
And those other counties I mentioned, you'll see they may be just separate agencies, but it'll give you other examples of how we do an audit.
Okay, and the type of questions that were asked and which department you reviewed under each department.
Right.
Okay.
And each department or elected official actually designs the scope for the audit, correct? Or work with you to come up with the scope?
It really depends on how involved everybody wants to be. Sometimes it'll be a combination of the elected official and the commissioners, or it really, however you guys would want to work it in Lorain County. Our goal is to just make sure that we put together a proposal that addresses everybody's, all the relevant concerns on areas to look at.
Yeah. Now I've done performance audits in the past, and I have family members that actually do it for large corporations as well as financial. Normally we don't look at other areas, we just go in and we design the performance plan and go in and see which ways we can actually reduce costs or make the process more efficient. So having comparables in an audit is probably not that crucial. Would you agree with that? Looking at Butler County or other counties?
You mean to get an idea?
Yeah, to kind of get an idea. I mean, when you're going in to do an audit, you almost want to be blind as far as to keep your eyes open.
Right.
And you're not looking at comparables to other things. So, I mean.
Right. I mean, the audit would be unique to Lorain. And just to clarify, I mean, we would come up with a scope in that letter of arrangement, but then we develop internally kind of more of a detailed audit plan, you know, that our staff uses to go about and to do an audit. You know, I think to answer your question, just because we found something in Butler County doesn't mean we're gonna find the same thing in Lorain County.
And
we
you're not
go in totally clear slate, you know, clear starting point,
And I think even with doing our audit here, we would probably want to do our design or scope before actually looking at other audits as well. That way we don't get.
It's up to I mean, I understand that point. Yeah, it's to see it to just come from a fresh slate.
Yeah, fresh start, looking at ways that we can combine services, and. Okay.
We've gotten requests. We put together a proposal for Washington County about looking at service consolidation and that kind of thing within their human service functions. But
Now, are you participating in the Sandusky and Perkins School District? Are they doing an audit prior? Because they're talking about mergers as of the paper the last couple days.
yeah, not that I'm aware of. They haven't contacted us.
Okay.
But we can, and again, to your point, we can look at other things that we didn't look at in these other county audits too. It's really all, we can put together the audit scope strictly based on what you would want us to look at. And then we as auditors, when we're going and looking at certain things, if we find things, you know, we have to make decisions about does it fit within our scope and doesn't it, or doesn't it. And sometimes we'll come up with what we call issues for further study, which these are things that we found during our audit. We're obligated to report on them, but we didn't go in depth because it wasn't part of the scope. Right. But that can still help you give, you know, ideas on how to address other things. And another way to approach, I mean, an audit of the county could be, we call it a risk-based approach, where, you know, maybe we put the audit together to look at all the key areas of operations, but more initially from a higher level. Then from that initial review, maybe we come up with a more detailed scope. And
that's picking the portions out of the macro to do the micro.
Right. So we can really structure it a lot of different ways.
Okay. And if we had other departments that wanted to get involved in the audit, you would sit down with them individually and work with that elected official, correct?
Absolutely. Yes.
Is the option of ramifications for those decisions included in that discussion? And I did read the audit that was done with the Children's Services Board, and one of the issues was increasing the number of children in residential care, which was more cost effective than having them in foster care, but not necessarily it did not elaborate or include the concern that would obviously come about from child advocates to say that the foster care would be more would be in their child's best interest as opposed to warehousing them, like we might have 30, 40 years ago in an orphanage. So I did not read any of those potential ramification kind of comments in the audit. It was simply, this is more cost effective. Is that what we would expect, or could we include something like that when we sit down as an individual department?
We always try to come up with pros and cons of various scenarios, and I think the issue in Mahoney County was, one reason, I don't think it was a direct recommendation. The thing with the Children's Services Board there is they didn't have any outcome type data that we always ask for. We call them performance measures, and within the Children's Services Board, they weren't really collecting reliable data on the outcome. So a part of our recommendation was you should do that first, and then use that along with the cost information to make decisions on placements and that kind of thing. We did look at some outcome data, some performance measures, but it was all data taken from the State Job and Family Services Agency, and Mahoney County really wasn't collecting anything to, to make sure that, their system is working the best. So that's kind of, we approached it that way there.
So it was the lack of outcome measures.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Anyone else wishing to address the board? Elected departments or representatives? Okay. Any other questions, board? Oh, David, go ahead. You can come up. We'll take public comment.
Public comment on this?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, is that all right to take public comment?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay.
I just meant before we're the elected officials, so I'm getting up for that. Hi, my name is David Ashenhurst. I live in Oberlin and come to a lot of these meetings and have watched these processes for a long time. I just had a couple of questions. First, on the performance audit section, we change auditors. The auditors change parties. How much does the performance audit section change when we change auditors? Is that sort of like civil service and it stays there no matter what?
It's for the most part, it's been unaffected. We've still had our same boss for the head of our department for the past 10 years. I report to him. There's my boss, and there's me and another counterpart that report to him, and all three of us have been with the office for over 10 years.
Thank you. Second, you said based on state law this is confidential, and we've had some discussion about whether these are recommendations or mandates, or sort of what the force of that is. What is the state law revised code or administrative code that covers this, the governance of this process?
I know one code section. It's revised code 121.22, section D. I think addresses the
121.22.
0.22.
That's the public meetings thing.
Right. That part addresses meetings we have that are, and why it's not subject to sunshine law.
Okay. Well, I'm more interested in the difference between recommendations and mandates. And we've been told, or gotten the impression, that these things aren't, that you have penalties for not following the recommendations, that they don't come as simply recommendations.
No, there's nothing in law that covers that because it's not a mandate. The recommendations aren't mandatory.
Okay.
But within the LEAP fund, I'd have to double check, but it's all on our website. I think a part of that would be reporting back on the status of the recommendations we make since you'd be getting the loan. And again, it's not to say that they all have to be implemented. If you don't implement something, maybe there's a rationale as to why you didn't,
Right.
and that would suffice.
Right. And speaking of that, you, during the slides, mentioned that they prioritize the requests, I guess, for audits. That's what it sounded like. And then you just said, well, maybe we won't even get enough to spend all of that. If somebody just came to you with the money, would you do it, or do you prioritize those too? Do you do every audit you're asked to do?
No, I mean, we don't. Sometimes it's just a resource issue on our part and timing that we don't have enough staff to do something. But for the most part, we're pretty responsive, especially if we're getting a request from a client. We try to schedule them in. If they agree to our proposal, we would by all means do an audit. I'm sure there have been a few exceptions, but I can't remember a time where we didn't do an audit when a government came to us and requested us to look at something. We fit them in our schedule. The LEAP fund, you can either you can use the LEAP fund or you don't have to use it. It's just that LEAP fund is where that's another option local governments could use to help defray the cost of the audit. So if you're going to apply for the LEAP through the LEAP fund, that's where we would go through an evaluation or scoring process to see which ones of the applicants of the LEAP fund we would do in that first round of audits.
Thank you. And finally, Commissioners, a few years ago I was down in Brown County, Indiana, where they had a performance audit done for how to handle the deer population that was all over the place. And the recommendation was to reintroduce the mountain lion. Needless to say, they did reject that recommendation ultimately, but that proved to be the cost-effective way of controlling the deer population. So I hear what we're saying in the courts as well, that cost-effectiveness is not the only thing one looks for.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I got a couple questions, Commissioner.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
First and foremost is, what are the backgrounds of the people coming in that are going to tell us the best way to do something, and what gives them the ability to make those recommendations?
All of our staff, I mean, they're at a minimum, they're four-year college degrees. Like I said, there's a diverse group of folks, diverse backgrounds. And again, we don't...
Can we have access to that information? See, I've been through a lot of audits with the state, and they have that notorious managerial comments section where it really looks good on paper, but they're not here for the application. And it's not as clean as you say when you make an answer to those things, because they do take exception when you don't implement certain actions that they recommend. All right, now, with all due respect, we're here laying it down every day and doing these things. Sometimes people come in and you got to wonder about some of the recommendations that have been made. We can go back to our audits and look at some of the managerial comments. Effectively, they sometimes cause us more problems in another area because they're trying to correct an area. And we never get to see the backgrounds of the auditors or their resumes or their experience. They just come in and make these recommendations, and then they leave. And then we spend the next couple of years making reports on their recommendations and arguing over why we haven't implemented something when we don't believe it works for us. Yeah, and so, I like your presentation, and I think performance audits, when they're targeted and specifically tailored towards certain areas that already look like they need improvement, but when they go fishing over the whole county to find something so they can justify that you recovered to pay for the audit, I have a lot of problem with that.
That's not what our goal would be. I mean, the management letter comments I can't speak to because, and those are in the financial audits, and I'm sure that they may be linked to some of the statutes. But we try in the performance audit side, we try to make sure that we're sharing things with you throughout the process. You'll see a preliminary recommendation. If you have questions or concerns about it, or it's going to impact something else, we listen to those concerns, and we try to make sure that we're not glossing over.
Well, I understand. We've had post and pre-audits and conferences and so forth, but at the end of the day, mostly there's a couple verbiage changes, but the issue is still there. I understand there's also an extensive reporting requirement should actions not be implemented. I was going over some of the documentation for that. Again, I don't want to appear to them against certain performance audits when they're targeted to specific areas that may suggest need improvement. But the state auditors tried to do performance auditing a couple of years back and incorporated it into their fiscal audits, and most of the counties had a hard time. They started going into audit areas that were outside the scope of fiscal audits and making their recommendation. And I have to challenge their competency to do that and their experience to do that. We're asked to do a performance audit here, but we don't get a chance to look at the background of the people that are going to audit us and where they get the credibility to do so, other than, well, I've been with the office for 10 years. I don't know what expertise they bring to the table.
Well, again, we'd be willing to share resumes if you wanted to of the folks that we would staff and audit.
Well, wouldn't you do that if wouldn't you want to know the competency of the people you were asking to make recommendations to you based upon a multi-million-dollar organization?
Sure, but like I said, we would, by all means, we would share that with you. But again, keep in mind what we do is it's data driven. We're collecting information from you, from other similar counties. We've got, it's the process that we focus in on, and those analysis and assessments, they don't only go through reviews and feedback with you. We have a pretty extensive internal review process where we constantly question conclusions, analysis, and we try to make sure that what we're recommending is practical, it's feasible, it makes sense. Those are requirements from the auditing standards that we have to abide by. In addition to the those auditing standards, or as a part of those standards, all of our staff members are required to go through 80 hours of continuing education, training every 2 years. That's a requirement based on those standards to make sure, we get the training that we need, we get updates on auditing standards, and we make sure that, we address the competency issue that you're bringing up.
I just wanted to share that with you.
Sure.
I respect what you're saying, but I've been to extensive, state audits, and I have some concerns on that, but not on performance auditing.
Mm-hmm.
If it's done in certain environments, the follow-up reporting though can be quite extensive, and something that people don't take into consideration with any kind of audit. It takes an extended burden on the organization itself to support that audit. So when somebody says an audit's going to be $150,000 or $175,000, the internal cost to us is significant because we have to turn a lot of bodies to that, because we have to provide extensive data and information and work internally to us. So the audit, if you do a full absorption cost of the audit, it's much more expensive than it appears simply on a piece of paper. And I just want to point out those facts. And with regard to the presentation I read on the bill here, I do love a positive organization that indicates immediately that they're going to find enough to pay for the audit coming in before they've even reviewed us. That's pretty sure. That's pretty sure of themselves. So they got to find something to justify it, right? I mean, that's what your documentation says.
I don't. You'd have to show me where that is. I mean, we make
I
no
will. It indicates that there'll be enough findings in the performance audit to make the cost justifiable to us.
But I'm making no guarantees.
I know you're not. I'm not suggesting, sir.
And that's why I think in the LEAP fund, like the application process, or as a part of the statute, there's that provision about if we don't identify enough, you don't pay the difference. Like I said, if we only identify $30,000 in savings, the cost was $50,000. Well, you don't pay that.
Let me ask you a question. How many audits have you done where you haven't found enough savings to pay for the audit?
There have been some. And right now we're doing an audit of an entity. I can't tell you which one because it's still in process, but we didn't identify any because we were looking at strictly purchasing practices.
But as a percentage of all the audits you do, how often does that happen?
That we find enough savings? It's pretty typical.
That you don't find enough
that we don't find, it's atypical. It's
usually
rare. we do. Right.
It's rare.
Right.
Okay, so I just want to point that out, that it's rare not to find the savings to cover the audit. I don't know that you'd be doing the audits if you weren't finding the savings there. It's just, there's a fine line there between, what we have to do. So the challenge is that you have to find enough to justify the experience and the process we've gone through.
Mm-hmm.
What's the percentage of the of your audits where people actually go against your recommendations?
A few years ago, we started to try to just come back on an informal basis and collect data to address some of that.
Right.
But we had to stop because of funding, budget constraints. But, I mean, usually entities, the recommendations we make, I would say the majority of them they understand and agree with. There may be some that they don't because of a philosophical difference maybe, or because for whatever reason it wouldn't work in that community. But by and large, I mean, our recommendations are taken pretty seriously and implemented at some point to some level. I mean, we've done a few follow-up audits recently based on their request. Youngstown City Schools contracted with us to come back and do a follow-up audit. We've actually done numerous performance audits, but we did one that was issued in 2008, and this most recent one we issued a few months ago, where they actually wanted us to come back and on a formal basis look at what they recommended, and they either fully or partially implemented about 80% of the recommendations, as an example.
A quick recap on this. Just with the LEAP money, we get the money. Within a year, we have to pay that back for the audit. Hope is that we actually get enough in the cost savings from your audit to pay for that, and then to go on in the future years with the cost savings.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much it?
Yep.
Okay.
Questions, Elizabeth?
Elizabeth Rumics, Oberlin. I have to.
Go ahead.
I have to say it's a pleasure to hear something explained pretty clearly, but in the continuing education of a citizen, I assume that the duties of the county auditor are completely separate from this kind of an audit, and is it of any value, that's an assumption, is it of any value to have the county auditor comment on the advisability of a performance audit?
I don't see anyone here from the auditor's office, but I would assume it's two different departments. You have the fiscal, which our county auditor is in charge of, and then you're a different department under performance, correct?
Right. The big part of the Auditor of State is the financial audit section. There's, I can't remember, 500 plus financial auditors.
Right.
We're 30. We're a pretty small piece of the pie.
Sure.
Yeah, I think this may be just a comment for the commissioners, and I think everybody's all for saving money, and I think in this county, all the elected officials have been cut 20% in their budgets in the last 3 years, so I think we are saving some money here. I've lost 22 deputies. I guess my comment would be, if you're going to look at my supplies and gasoline and equipment and say, hey, we can cut in this area, okay, but the recommendation may be, well, the sheriff needs 11 of his deputies back. Now, are the commissioners going to ignore the 11 deputies that might come back, or the 8 cruisers that I need to buy, and say, let's just go ahead and cut on this side, but sorry, we can't do it over here, Sheriff. That's my concern. So I think
You
we've
got
all
that
been
from me
cut.
last week, I think.
I think those are good points. When we do get the auditor's recommendations after a performance audit, if it says you need to expand here, the audit can't just be cost savings, I would assume.
Right.
It's got to be better performance, so to carry out the mandates of an office, whether it's the sheriff, the prosecutor, the auditor, or the commissioners, and the recommendation is to, you have to, additional staff here to meet your mandates, because you have to follow code, what we're required to do, correct? In your
The
performance
services.
audits,
I'm sorry?
in your performance audits, you have to follow revised code if it says you have to perform a certain service.
Right. Like yeah, a lot of our, if it's a mandated service, yeah,
Right.
right.
So if there are additional, what happens on that back? I mean, have you had audits in the past that say you need to increase here while you're decreasing there? I mean, how does that play out in a total performance audit? Or do you just do it from a budgetary standpoint? Okay, county has $45 million to work with. Here's the services you can provide to get to that $45 million.
It all depends on kind of how you want us to structure it. If you wanted the audit to just focus primarily on efficiency and cost savings, like with the sheriff's office example, if we ran those initial staffing comparisons and they looked low, we probably wouldn't go further. If you wanted us to make sure that their staffing levels didn't have an adverse impact on their services, well then we would do more and say, well, did you go too far? Do you need more deputies within the
You
sheriff's
widen the
department?
scope of the
Right,
ask for
right.
the audit.
So
Okay.
really all depends on how the scope of the audit to start with. That will drive how far we go and look at, other areas. And oftentimes we've recommended, adding here or there. Lots of times with technology, that comes with a cost investment to improve efficiency. So we also, we try to quantify, where we make a recommendation that has a cost implication, we're obligated to try to quantify that.
I think one thing we got to remember too is we don't have unlimited funds, so we do have to keep the budget in mind on this too. It's nice to say if we would need to have more personnel in this department or that, but if we don't have the revenue to do it, I don't think you need to waste your time on telling us it'd be great to have, so many people in this department, or giving all the county commissioners and additional stuff if we just can't fund it. So the budget's got to be a huge part of it.
Sure.
Well, I thought that was just clarifying what the sheriff had
Okay.
stated, that's all. That if they said, if they're doing, just depending on the scope, we're looking to say, I would think the auditor's office, we have $45 million to work with.
Yeah, I just want to make
What's
sure.
our best numbers
Right.
to get to that $45 million
Okay,
number?
I
So
misunderstood you. I thought you meant you wanted to look past that.
No, I was just
Okay.
addressing, so the sheriff,
Yeah.
what he said up there if you needed to, and I was trying to explain what that was saying, so.
Yeah, for us, there's a balance between efficiency or the cost side versus effectiveness. So, those could be interrelated. And again, like I said, it depends on scope and what you want us to focus on. And then just to clarify, again, a major part of our work is about cost and being cost effective, but that doesn't mean we don't look at the service effectiveness side of things. And that's where, again, the scope of the audit would dictate.
Is that included in your report, like if you're going to recommend? And this is just an example, Sheriff, so don't come up here and yell at me. If you made a recommendation for the sheriff to cut his budget, and what the budget cost, he was going to have to lay off officers or something of that sort. I got Kelly over there with the camera, so I want to choose my words wisely. We're live streaming now too, so just in case everyone wants to know. You're going to go through, you're going to do the audit, you're going to take a look at where we can cut costs, but you're going to give us like a recommendation. Okay, if you're going to do this, you're going to cut the sheriff's department. This is a cut in service, and kind of rate it to where, okay, if you went through and you cut the transit, this is another service cost, and kind of give your priority on what you thought would be beneficial for the county.
Right. We try to look at it from with your current level of service. Is it efficient? Can you be more efficient and still maintain your current level of service? If the only way you could reduce costs would directly impact service levels, we would acknowledge that.
So that would be stated in the report. Okay.
Anyone else? Any elected officials or people representing electeds? Anything else, board?
Well, I guess I'm leaning on the side of doing some sort of audit. I'm not sure how much in depth I think we need to go on that, but I think it would have to be a county-wide type audit. It can't just be like, spot audit here, a spot audit there. I'm concerned about the cost. Like, we don't have the funding, to do such an audit, but I think we need the backup of, sometimes people do things the same way for a long period of time and they don't even know why. Mm-hmm. So of course I think there's going to be ways of saving money in some respect. So I'm not sure how we would go about this, if we would give the elected officials an opportunity to respond to a letter of some sort that we would send to them to see if they would be wanting to engage in this process with us, or if we would just be doing this on our own under the things that we control. So once we would get to a point where we find out who is wanting to participate, then you would give us the cost.
Right, and we would probably want to come out and meet again to talk about whatever you select, like what do you envision in those areas, us looking at. I definitely think we would want to have another meeting with whoever else would be involved with the audit to make sure we get, a clear understanding of the scope. And again, another thing we do sometimes is before we put together the formal contract, we call it a scope proposal, where it would outline the areas we could look at and then attach a cost estimate to those areas, and that could help you pick and choose what you would want to look at based on the cost. We do that pretty regularly, actually, because oftentimes, a government may not know specifically what they would want. They have ideas, but then they ask us, based on your experience, what have you looked at before? So we've kind of put together those, scope proposals, kind of a menu of options that you could pick from.
Okay.
Is there any opinions from the elected officials here on what their thoughts are for this audit? Mr. Carney? That's a yearbook watching the monitor. No comment? Really, Ken?
Mm-hmm.
Normally you're always talkative.
I wanted to add one more thing, too, that I forgot to mention. Oftentimes when we go and do these audits and we're doing interviews with the various folks in the departments, we get lots of good ideas. I think everybody within the county probably has ideas on how maybe to do things differently or better or more efficiently, and sometimes those ideas make a lot of sense and they end up being our recommendations. Some of our recommendations actually lend support or justification for what you may have already been envisioning to start with.
Well,
I
I
like
hope
that.
we wouldn't be envisioning, and I hope we would be doing them.
Well, true. But you know what I mean. Sometimes folks have ideas, and for whatever reason, they don't go anywhere. And that's the whole reason why we make sure we try to make it collaborative, where we don't do the audits in a vacuum, I guess.
Well, thank you for coming. I appreciate you fighting traffic to get here this
Yeah,
morning.
I
with the
apologize for
accident.
coming a few minutes late. There was 2 of the 4 lanes coming in from 90 from the east side were out like 45 minutes just.
Under construction.
There was an accident. There was an accident.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Matt. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay.
You going, or?
I really need to. Do you need me here for your resolution of
Would-
support?
I hope
Do you
not.
want me
I
to
don't know.
do Commissioner's report first? Do you have anything? And then
Oh, I've got a ton of things.
Or do
I
you wanna-
really have to get on the phone. Real quick report. Again, NOACA with the sale and lease of the Turnpike. I also had a meeting on Monday at LEEDCO, the Lake Erie Energy Development Corporation, the offshore wind project. It's part of a 4-county process. It is moving forward, actually a year's time of working on a revenue sharing agreement. I'd like to thank our County Prosecutor's Office, Jerry and Matt Mishak, for working with us with Lake County, Ashtabula, Cuyahoga County, and the City of Cleveland. I have sent the information to my 2 other commissioners to look at. I'd like to bring Mike Challenger on next week just to go over some small portions of it. This is just the first part, but it's actually a revenue sharing in regards to the submerged land leases. Small money the first 5 years, only $5,500 to $11,000 per county, but it would be one of the first multiple county revenue sharing agreements in the state of Ohio, which is based on economic development. Pardon me?
we received Lake County's resolution.
Okay, Lake
It's on
County
your board.
passed theirs, correct. The Cuyahoga County Port Authority was to pass theirs tomorrow. Dan Claypool from Ashtabula was hoping yesterday, but probably not till next week, and I told him hopefully next week we can pass it here. Also, kudos to the sheriff who just left, but I went and attended Lorain Police Memorial yesterday at the Palace Civic Center, all the electeds that were there, Dennis Will, Judge Mihak, a multitude of folks, Judge Walther, very moving ceremony. Captain Schmidl from the city of Lorain was the MC, did a very good job. Excuse me, I really got to get on the phone though.
Do you want to do
Sure.
you need,
Pardon
you
me?
need him to stay to do yours?
I don't think so. I hope not. I'm going to pull from the floor resolution. It's in the matter of supporting an amendment to House Bill 153, the state budget bill, to transfer the responsibility for indigent defense from the counties to the state. It was pulled a couple weeks ago, and I believe that you were in favor of that for the indigent attorneys, so that eventually the state would take over. The amount that we pay right now is about 1.7 million, is it? No.
1.7 with a
1.7 with a
payback.
35% return from the state. So eventually, in the year, I believe 2017, the state would pay that full amount and take the burden off of the county. Is that something that you think you would support, Mr. Williams?
You're
Put this
saying that-
into the budget bill.
Going back to Mr. Boose's bill,
Going
bring it
back,
up on the Senate
bring
side.
it up on the Senate side. Well, you got me to vote for one
All right,
resolution.
okay. Okay, you can go.
We'll make the motion on here. It's going to take a second to vote on it. You don't want 2 out of 3.
Oh, you want to? Okay, I make a motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
Any further discussion? Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
Mr. Kayla?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
You rushed me.
Okay, bye.
Ms. Kukowski, real
Yes.
quick, if you don't mind. I wanted to bring
I'm
up
not
the
done yet.
I'm sorry?
I'm not done yet, but go ahead.
I just wanted to bring the prosecutor up before
Absolutely.
you left.
Sure.
Uh,
No, no,
Could you
go
come
ahead.
up to the podium? The prosecutor sent over a letter stating on some of the cuts that he's made over in 2009, 2010, and then even with the 2011 cut, and how difficult it was. And I just wanted to give you the opportunity to talk here as well.
As I indicated in the letter, one of our difficulties and what I said to the commission when I came over here and spoke about your proposed 5% cuts is it was going to cost us people. I mean, we had to react immediately. We could not do that because we were operating under the quarterly budgeting process. And so 2 of our budgeting periods, 2 of the pay periods were already accounted for once you gave us the letter. Well, the only way I can make up for that is either transfer money from one place to the other because I can't cut people. In addition to that, as I indicated in the letter, we were already short personnel with people on extended medical leave. We have had people pass away. And what we did is we have not replaced 2 individuals, We will have to continue to address that situation as the year goes on. I can tell you that, as I told you originally, I get a cut, it's going to reduce my people. It's going to cause me people and personnel to address those issues. So what we've done is I've asked you to transfer money out of a non-personnel account to address this shortfall, and we will continue through the year to address what we can. We're always evaluating, but as I indicated, we get any type of a cut, it's going to affect our personnel level because there is no other places to go. As I indicated in there, we got the mandate from the state of Ohio with no funding for the open file discovery, which cost us several $1,000s for a new copier, for a duplicator, and for some equipment to enhance the videos and make those copies. Again, that was things we didn't anticipate, even though they've been talking about it for some time, and nothing came from the state to assist us in that area. So we're continuing to try to be efficient. It's just, you know, when we have a shortage, we have a cut in our budget, it's going to cost us people.
Okay. I read your letter, and I just wanted to give you the opportunity to address the board in person on it and let everybody know what you've done. The 2009 cuts, 2010 cuts, and then also so far in 2011. So it's tough economic times, and that it's not a decision that's easy to be made, and that. But I wanted to let you speak here. So, okay, and we will definitely consider that your words in the future. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
No, thank you. We know you do a fantastic job.
Okay. I'm sorry, Lord. Thank you.
Okay. Well, Thursday night I attended the annual Goodwill meeting at DeLuca's. I didn't realize this, but I was only an ad hoc committee on their board, but now I'm official board member of the Goodwill in Lorain County. Friday afternoon, I am the chairperson for the 911 review committee, and two things got brought up. One, I'm sure you're all aware that a 911 operator in Norwalk did not give the person the correct information when they called 911 when their car was being submerged underwater. And the report had said that it was all of the state of Ohio did not have the appropriate response to something like that. And I just want everybody in Lorain County to know that our 911 operations does have a response if somebody were to call in with that type of an emergency. The other thing that was brought up, which is kind of a cool thing, it's called EM Finders, and what it is, it's for somebody maybe like in a nursing home or a child that would be have a potential to wander, and it would be their wrist, something on their wrist or something on their ankle, and their caregiver would activate it. So if they were to be lost, they couldn't push it themselves, or there's no buttons on it. So if they were to be lost, they would be able to be found by, they would call into 911 and be found by our GPS system, and the 911 operators would be able to locate them with the technology that we have. So besides, and I want to thank Mr. Williams for agreeing on this House Bill 153 amendment so that we won't have to worry about the $1.7 million that we are currently paying for our indigent attorney fees, because that would help out the county tremendously, and I appreciate his vote on that. And I believe that is the end of my report. Did you have anything else?
Yeah, just want to, well, I think everyone knows there's been a little dispute between the judges and the Board of Commissioners, if you've been reading the newspapers. And I sat down with Judge Walters. I asked to meet with all the judges, and unfortunately I was only meet with Judge Walters at the time. And when I disagree with someone, I'm very vocal. And but when somebody does something that I think is a positive, I think they also deserve credit on that. And after meeting with Judge Walters, he informed us, I don't know if you've seen the budget, that he's actually going to take another $6,100 out of his budget for 2012, so compared to his 2011 budget. So the 2012 budget went down from $513,000 down to $487,000. And me and the judge went through, we talked about different things, and he's working on some projects that I think is going to improve the county and reduce costs. And while He did make the cost savings cuts, or actually returning the money that we gave him. I think it's a good example for all elected officials. And I hope that the common plea judges will actually look at what he's done in his courtroom and continue on and make these cuts as well. We are looking at a huge deficit next year. It's good. I guess the commissioners are debating if it's going to be between 3 to 6 million, depending on which forecast you go with. And there are going to be cuts that are going to need to be made. And that's one reason I am looking at this performance audit, because I want residents of Lorain County to know that we are serious about making the changes in this county to improve processes and reduce the cost to the taxpayers. I don't see a sales tax increasing in November, and until we can actually show that we are going to make the changes and reduce costs, I'm not going to be able to support a sales tax increase. So I hope that we can get this performance audit in. I hope other elected officials will look into this and bring the auditor in so we can look at ways to reduce costs and be good stewards of taxpayer money. That's in my end of my report.
Mr. Cortez, do you have anything?
I need a resolution from the floor. This is actually a housekeeping resolution. Last year we refinanced the outstanding obligations on the Justice Center and extended the bond provisions. Some of the interest amount payments changed, and we had a considerable amount of savings in year 1 and 2. For 2011 and 12, we saved $282,386 in the interest, and then in 2013 we begin to save $1 million on the debt service payments. We had 2 non-callables for 11 and 12 that we had to escrow, and then we have to make the interest payment. The interest payment is different than what the resolution indicated previously. So in order to do that, we need to housekeep that so that we have a clear understanding in the auditor's office of what needs to be paid. I'll pass this as a breakdown of the information. There's no additional cost there. It's just we never cleaned up the old payment schedule with regard to making these payments when we did the refinancing of those outstanding obligations.
I know we're going to go into executive session. If we could go into admin afterwards, let us review the numbers.
Perfect.
And then afterwards we could do the resolution.
Perfect.
Okay. Is that okay with you?
That's fine with me, sure.
Yeah.
With that, I have the only thing I have to say is congratulations to Kelly, who was awarded. You were awarded what, Kelly?
Best blog?
Yeah, for our division.
News blog, right? Not just a blog. It was.
Yeah, it's a news blog about being a reporter.
Congratulations.
All right.
That's all I have.
Mr. Innes, Assistant County Prosecutor.
Commissioners, I have 3 matters of imminent court action that I need to discuss with you in executive session.
Board of Correspondence.
I move the reading be waived.
Oh, I'm sorry. Second. I'm reading stuff.
Discussion.
Sorry.
Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Any further public comment?
Nancy?
While Nancy's walking up here, we're probably going to keep coming. We're going to have to approve a camera for her. We've been putting that off, so if we could go ahead and get the approval on that.
Was there somebody had brought up that there was a camera that was
It was a
purchased that they
video.
didn't
It was
need?
a video camera that we're using for like webinars, but she actually needs
A digital camera?
digital
Yeah,
one.
my inspections start Monday, actually.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the
And I'll
purchase of the
second.
camera.
Any further discussion? Ms. Kowski.
Aye. Do we need to not to
Mr.
exceed
Williams.
amount or anything? Do you know how much the cameras
She
are,
said
like
about
300?
300, and I'm sure
Yeah.
I could find one much under
That's
that.
fine,
I'll
okay.
count.
Not to exceed 3.
Not to exceed 300?
Mhm.
Okay. I second. Okay.
Did you call for
Ms.
this?
Kowski.
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Thank you.
That wasn't too hard, was it?
No, it wasn't. That isn't what I came up here for, but
Okay.
what a lovely
Yeah.
surprise. Thank you. I wanted to let the commissioners know that Lorain Soil and Water had applied for a 319 non-point source pollution grant through Ohio EPA. The grant that was applied for is $67,285 with the help of community development, and thanks to them helping me get this process completed. I applied for 3 rain gardens. Back in March of 2009, the commissioners were kind enough to let me put a rain garden on the county ground at the Ag Center. Unfortunately, I was not able to move forward in this process, but one of the 3 rain gardens will be applied there. Also in Elyria Township and Columbia Township. There will be no charge whatsoever to the county commissioners or either township, and this is to help the county as a whole, plus the 2 townships which are MS4 communities, to comply with one of their best management practices for Phase 2.
Can you explain what a rain garden is?
A rain garden is like a bioretention. It will hold water for anywhere from 48 to 72 hours. It is plants and special soils that will allow that water to percolate. These plants have what you call wet feet, or they like to have their feet wet to help that water absorb properly and to help stop non-point solution that eventually enters the waters of the state.
Very nice.
I just wanted to keep you abreast. I won't know until the grants are awarded in sometime November. If we are lucky enough to get that grant, then construction will start in spring of 2012.
What happened to my roof guard, the lawn on the roof that we were talking about?
Well, I can only do one at a time. This is a 3-year grant. I have been in constant talk with EPA on this grant, and I had told them that once this grant is completed, I would like to apply for 3 more rain gardens. I can surely go to the infrastructure of a green roof as well. I'm sure they would be all over that. To keep all the MS4s up to date and compliant with EPA, especially their best management practices. So that's my goal and my outlook for Lorain County.
I'm really excited about this grant opportunity because I think this is the first time we collaborated through community development in your office and worked on a grant, and you made us aware of those, and more and more we're bringing together the energies and the talent possessed in both organizations to collaboratively get some things done. So that was exciting for us.
It was, and I appreciate their help. And this Phase 2 is a whole community, and just about everybody's involved in that, so we do need to work together. But thank you.
See you at SWAC tomorrow night.
I'm sorry I won't be there. I have a medical issue I need to take care of. I apologize.
Well, we're going to inform them, though, of the grants, if that's okay with you.
Oh, absolutely.
That went out.
Don's very well aware of that.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you.
Nancy.
Thanks for the camera.
You're welcome.
Just one quick reminder too, at the airport on Saturday, they're gonna have like a air show out there. So
Free plane rides.
Didn't they hear something about you in a dunk tank?
That was you in the dunk tank.
No, that's Mr. Kalo talking again.
Commissioner, do you want to give give you a brief rundown of what the conversation was yesterday? Because that issue has been discussed publicly with the.
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to brief you personally.
No,
but you were involved in setting that up. And
yeah, go ahead. Explain to everyone what the call was regarding in that. So
we've had this ongoing difference of opinion with regard to the contract with Republic, and it was discussed out here extensively. And Commissioner Williams did establish contact with the governor's office, and we were able to have an extensive conversation with one of his executive assistants yesterday. I found it to be very fruitful. We prepped them pretty well, sent in all the letters, information, and he too has agreed that we need to have a personal meeting in Columbus with the director of the Ohio EPA, and there's a strong indication that we should be able to reach hopefully some kind of conclusion on that. But it's the next step, and I'm appreciative that we were able to do that and get that accomplished. Republic has also stepped into the ring, and I know that they've made contact also through different channels with the governor's office, and have people speaking to his staff folks also with regard to finding a solution that is satisfying to everybody and still allows us to be able to continue forward with what the district feels is in the best interest of the community. Commissioner Williams, set that up, and we were in the conversation, and then conversation ended, and then so we're on cell phones, and I hadn't had a chance to loop around and brief him more fully on what occurred after we lost the first round of communication. But I think that overall it was lengthy, but I felt very satisfied at the conclusion of that conversation.
Well, I appreciate taking the call. We actually did have a conference call. We were playing phone tag going back for a while, and then Mr. Cortez took the lead on this and went through and was able to speak with Craig on this.
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of goes back to what my belief is, and that is pick up the phone, reach out to the leaders. Doesn't matter if it's D or an R. You talk to the individual, and that's where you make your networking connection. And I'm glad to hear that you're going to be going to the meeting on Thursday with the governor. We're actually going to have Mr. Cortez going and a couple other members. And it's just going out and networking. We want to remind the governor, hey, we're here in Lorain County. Don't focus too much on Cuyahoga County. We have a lot to offer here, and we probably can do it cheaper and better. So,
but we never do it cheaper. We do it less expensive and better.
There you go. More politically correct than I.
Is that it? Anybody else wishing to address the board before we adjourn?
No,
Seeing.
executive session.
Pardon me?
You're going to go into executive session?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll let motion to go into executive session as outlined by the administrator and the assistant county prosecutor.
I second
Ms.
motion.
Kowski?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
This has been a broadcast of the recent Lorain County Commissioners' General Meeting. Unless otherwise announced, meetings are held Wednesday morning at 9:30 at the Administration Building, 226 Middle Avenue, 4th floor, downtown Elyria. These are public meetings, and you are invited to attend. Agendas are posted prior to the meeting at www.loraincounty.us. Click on Departments to see the Commissioners page, then click on View Agenda for a printable copy of the agenda. Carpooling, a great way to save on fuel, tolls, and parking. Serving 13 counties, secure and safe Ohio rideshare makes it easy to connect with carpool partners safely. You control information shared. Discuss your destinations and needs through our safe site. Carpooling reduces pollution and traffic congestion, while it lowers stress and gives riders time to read, work, sleep, socialize. 1-800-825-RIDE or register online at ohiorideshare.com. Point, click, ride.
In 1787, the Continental Congress organized the lands from the Ohio River to the Mississippi into the Northwest Territories. In 1803, the first of these territories to become a state was Ohio. Ohio was in turn divided into various land grants, including the Connecticut Western Reserve in the northeast corner of the state. The Western Reserve included the area that is today Lorain County. As Ohio gradually increased its counties to the present 88, the land we know as Lorain County went through several changes. Until 1810, the area was split between Geauga and Portage counties. When the area was being organized into Lorain County in 1822, it was created out of land from Huron, Cuyahoga, and Medina counties. At the time of its birth, Lorain County included Olmsted Township, now in Cuyahoga County, Spencer and Homer Townships, now in Medina County, and Troy and Sullivan Townships, now in Ashland County. This map illustrates the county as it appeared at the time of Ohio's centennial, and although some of the townships have been absorbed by incorporation, it also represents the shape of Lorain County today. Let's take a brief historical look at each of Lorain County's 21 townships. In 1807, the Calvin Hoadley and Herman Bronson families of Waterbury, Connecticut began the settlement of Columbia. After a 3-month trek, the pioneers arrived in their new homeland in time to celebrate Christmas. The Bronsons, including their 7-month-old son, began that winter sheltered by their overturned bobsled wagon converted into a frontier lean-to. The mouth of the Black River also saw the beginning of its first settlement in 1807, when Azariah Beebe established a trading post for Nathan Perry. This area, which 20 years earlier had seen a short-lived Moravian mission, would gradually grow into the village of Charleston in the township called Black River. Years later, this township would be removed from county maps because of the incorporation of the city of Lorain. Charleston adopted the county's name of Lorain when the city was incorporated in 1874. The dramatic growth of the city was spurred on by the expanding fishing and shipbuilding industries. In 1894, when Tom Johnson brought his steel mill to town, Lorain's destiny to be the county's largest city was assured. In 1813, the township of Ridgeville was officially organized. 3 years earlier, members of the Beebe, Terrell, and Root families had established this new settlement they called Rootstown. The change to Ridgeville was decided upon to indicate the sand ridges that passed through the area and provided transportation routes and fertile farmland. The area around the intersection of Butternut Ridge and Roots Road, first called Briggs Corner, was by 1880 known as Fields Corners and was the site of the town's water well. With the growth of the city of North Ridgeville, the township of Ridgeville was incorporated out of existence. In 1810, Silas Wilmot, along with Asa and Ira Morgan, erected a cabin on Butternut Ridge, and the community later called Eaton Township was begun. Wilmot married Chloe Hubbard of Ashtabula, and they were given the cabin, thereby becoming the township's pioneering couple. When Ridgeville Township was organized in 1813, it included Eaton, which was at that time called Holbrook. While the area was still a part of Cuyahoga County, the township of Eaton was separated from Ridgeville. Its first officers were elected in 1823, while the township was in transition to the new Lorain County. Amherst's township's founding can be traced to one Jacob Shoup. After first settling on the Black River, he moved in 1811 to the Beaver Creek. By 1815, he had erected a grist mill and the area's first distillery. Whiskeyville, today the intersection of Routes 58 and 113, earned its nickname as a center for the production of this important pioneer commodity. As the primary community of the township developed at the Old Spring, it came to be known as Amherst Corners. By 1836, the name Amherstville was recorded in the county offices, and in 1873, the town was incorporated as North Amherst. In 1909, the U.S. Postal Service had to choose between the villages of North and South Amherst. They chose the former, which then became the official and present-day Amherst. In 1917, in the northeast corner of the county, the township of Avon became another of Lorain County's 21 townships to vanish due to city incorporation. In 1814, Wilbur Cahoon had arrived from Montgomery County, New York, to become the first to settle in what was then Troy Township of Cuyahoga County. The farming community grew around its power source, the French Creek. Development along the interurban line would incorporate the northern part of the township into the city of Avon Lake in 1911, with the remainder of the township becoming the village of Avon in 1917. It was families such as the Burrell, Day, and Roots who established themselves in the Sheffield area in 1815 and 16. The township of Sheffield would not actually be created until 1824, when the newly elected Lorain County Commissioners made the township one of the first acts of their administration. The land had been primarily in Cuyahoga County prior to the 1822 reorganization. The southwest corner of the township was in Huron County and is today the only place to find a small section still called Sheffield Township. The remainder of the area has been incorporated, like its neighbor Avon, with the north becoming Sheffield Lake and the south the village of Sheffield. In 1816, Colonel Henry Brown of Stockbridge, Massachusetts, purchased a large tract of land known as Number 6, Range 19. Mr. Brown would later name the township after himself by simply adding Helm to his family name. Like the Old Saxon Ham, the suffix meant home. The Deacon Shepherd family were the first settlers when they arrived on July 4, 1817. The village of Brownhelm Mills, located in Benjamin Bacon's Mill Hollow, was one of 3 communities to develop. Bacon's Corners, or the center, was 3 miles east of the hollow, while just west of the hollow was Rugby, where stores, a church, a school, and the post office were located. The first settlers to the Grafton Township area were Jonathan and Grendall Rawson in 1816. 10 years later, the Rawsons were forced to build a grist mill, or forfeit their land under their original agreement with the Western Reserve Land Company. Railroads and quarries were the greatest influence on the growth of the village the locals called Rawsonville. The quarrying industry in particular was responsible for the influx of French-Canadian, Welsh, Irish, Polish, and German immigrants. In 1877, when the village was being incorporated, the name Rawsonville was dropped in favor of the railroad station name of Grafton. Originally a part of Elyria Township, Carlisle was settled in 1816 by John Bacon of Windham County, Vermont. When the new Lorain County was being organized in 1822, Carlisle Township became its own entity. LaPorte developed as the township village with Phineas Johnson as the first postmaster and hotel owner. In 1840, Anson Brayman's Carlisle Nursery became the first of its kind in Lorain County. Quarrying was another important industry of the township, as the sandstone blocks were used for city buildings as far away as Toronto. Founding father Heman Ely owned over 10,000 acres of the land that would be developed into the township of Elyria, and the city which also bears his family name. In 1817, Artemus Beebe headed a work crew that came to establish a new village at the Y of the Black River branches. Mills were constructed and the main street cleared. Beebe's crew also erected a home for Mr. Ely at Broad and East Bridge Streets, and a home for himself across the street, which became the Beebe Tavern. Both structures avoided demolition until well into the 20th century. In 1822, Mr. Ely spearheaded the movement to create Lorain County. He donated the land for the county courthouse, thus influencing the choice of Elyria as the county seat. Mr. Ely's little village would develop into a city with a varied industrial base as well as the center of government for Lorain County. Simon Durand came to America as an interpreter for Revolutionary War hero French General Lafayette. Durand remained in the new nation and in the winter of 1817 moved from New York State to the 160 acres he had purchased south of Brownhelm. 10 years later, the population of the area was enough to support the formation of a new township. With the southern portion ceded to Brighton and the northern portion annexed from Brownhelm, the township of Henrietta was created in 1827. Although New England families represented the majority of settlers to the area in 1818, one of the pioneers was William Welling of Montgomery County, New York. History is not clear if the community was named in honor of Welling or for the famous English Duke of Wellington, hero of Europe's recent Napoleonic Wars. With the coming of the railroad, Wellington grew into an agricultural marketplace, and in fact was the nation's leader in cheese production from 1870 to 1900. The county fair, now located in Wellington, helps to continue the depiction of small-town America shown in native son Archibald Willard's famous painting, The Spirit of '76. In 1818, Joseph Sage and the family of his son-in-law, John Laborie, journeyed through a severe winter from Connecticut to their new homestead in Huntington Township. More pioneering families came to the area, and by 1822, the population was such that the Medina County Commissioners incorporated the township using the Huntington, Connecticut hometown of many of the settlers as its new name. Lumber, grain, and cheese dominated the local economy. In 1824, when Lorain County came into full operation, Huntington was transferred from Medina County. The citizens of Old Russia Township, that had been first settled in 1818, requested detachment from Black River Township in 1825. The town and college of Oberlin were founded in 1833 and would grow to dominate the area. The Oberlin concept combined a Christian community and a Christian coeducational institute. Through the influence of founders John Shippard and Philo Stewart, New York businessman Arthur Tappan, and noted evangelist Charles Finney, the college would become not only co-ed, but also multiracial and the nation's leader in the abolitionist movement. The independent spirit that created the first Russia Township was evident once again in 1992, as New Russia Township detached itself from Oberlin. In 1820, the Peter Penfield family began the permanent settlement of the area he had first selected in the fall of 1818. Penfield Township's organizational election was held in April of 1825. The first religious service was held in 1826, and the first school was in session in the summer of 1829. The township's first post office put the emphasis on post and not the office. As the Penfields lived well off the established mail route, a hollow tree near the river was used by the local residents for sending and receiving the mail. The township, with its fertile soil, grew into a part of Lorain County's rich agricultural heritage. In the fall of 1820, Abner Loveland, Jr. became the first permanent settler of Brighton. Within a year, the families of Joseph Kingsbury and Abner Loveland, Sr. had arrived, and the new community began to grow. With elections held in the spring of 1823, Brighton Township was being organized at the same time the area was being transferred from Medina to Lorain County. Like much of the new county, Brighton was essentially agricultural. Although Pittsfield's first settlers arrived in 1813, the area was considered too dangerous because of the British and Indian activity connected to the War of 1812. By 1820, the land was surveyed, and Milton Whitney became the owner of a large parcel. Whitney arranged for the Waite brothers of Russia Township to become the first permanent settlers in the spring of 1821. By 1831, there were enough residents to request that the county incorporate a township independent of Wellington. Pittsfield was chosen as the township's name to honor the Massachusetts hometown of many of the area's pioneers. LaGrange Township's first settler was Nathan Clark, who in the fall of 1825 established his new homestead on the east branch of the Black River. By the summer of 1826, 14 more settlers had arrived. The name LaGrange, which is French for the farm, was chosen to honor French General Lafayette, as it was also the name of his country estate. In 1827, the area was separated from Carlisle Township and reorganized with elections in April into the new township of LaGrange. By 1875, the center had grown into a village, also incorporated as LaGrange. The pioneer settler of the Camden area was Leonard Clark. Over the next 4 years, other families moved into the area, including Roswell Babcox, who built the first frame house in 1833. Early on, the area was divided between Henrietta and Brighton townships. In 1835, the new township of Camden was created by the county commissioners, and the first elections held in April of 1836. When the first post office was established in 1835, the community was called Panelise. The name was changed to Camden, then later to North Camden. In 1852, the Lake Shore and Michigan Southern Railroad called its station Binghamton, but that was soon changed, as the town adopted the name Kipton. Kipton's more important connection to the railroad was a tragic collision in 1891. The wreck was instrumental in the creation of standardized or railroad time. Rochester was the last township within the present-day boundaries of Lorain County to be settled. Stephen Babcock brought his family from Massachusetts in the spring of 1832 to settle on land he had prepared the previous year. The area grew quickly, and by 1835, the commissioners formed a new township with the first elections held in April of 1836. The township's farming and related businesses grew with the population. By 1880, close to 700 citizens lived in the area. The population shifted from Rochester Center to Rochester Station when the Big Four Railroad came through the township. The small town boom would turn to bust when the railroad eliminated Rochester as a scheduled stop. The depot would be used as a schoolhouse, as the home of the Rochester Rod and Gun Club, and today as the home of the Rochester Historical Society.